See how it goes.
We shall find out.
As we're live, can you let me know how everything's looking on your end? Because
I see it says live, and you're coming through loud and clear on my end. I'm gonna put it in the threadcast, so tell everyone to go to YouTube.
yeah, everybody go to YouTube.
Know how it sounds.
I have spaces today, and I also won't be able to see the threadcast, so I'm gonna have to rely
That's right.
on
Well,
you
yeah, I'll keep.
if you don't mind. Yeah, they just sent a text message. When Starlink?
Yeah,
I don't think Starlink would actually work where I live.
Mike's got it. That's what he uses as his full-time internet.
Is he in a city?
Not really. I wouldn't say it's rural, but I wouldn't say it's urban.
I think that's the thing is Starlink wouldn't work well in a city environment, is what I've heard.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's why it works for him. Yeah, because he's
Yeah.
northeast. He's not very far from the coastline, but he's also in between. He's definitely not city. So it's got a little bit of a rural, like it's definitely suburb, but it's suburb with like a little bit of a rural vibe to it.
Oh,
I didn't.
okay.
That's funny. So it actually works better in spread out places.
Yeah. My understanding is that it doesn't work well in high rises and whatnot.
I guess that makes sense. It might not work well for me at all than where I live.
I don't think any like densely populated areas won't work well.
Yeah.
All right.
Letting everyone know that you go to YouTube and that there won't be spaces. Oh, hold on. I am in an old threadcast. Wait, oh my God.
You should be able to just edit.
I have no idea how I ended up on that one.
You should be able to just click edit, and then I'm not going to check the threadcast because I feel like if I try to use my phone at all, it's going to just cut the connection on everything.
Copy pasta.
While you do that, I will give people the quick rundown. Of everything that's been going on. We posted, so every week now we're doing, like I mentioned last week, we're doing a weekly, kind of update in the Leoverse, everything that's happening. This week it was posted on X. It was also posted on the main blog account. You can also go to leodex.io/blog, and we've got that new blog section where all of that stuff is automatically posted there too. So you can go read that if you want the full breakdown. Some of the key pieces are, the first is I released a blog post this morning talking about where I see Leo headed in the next 10 years. In that post, I outline the $10 billion market cap target that I have for Leo by 2035, which would put Leo at around $350 or so per Leo. I put out that blog post on my account. You're welcome to go read it. I talk about how there's kind of 4 pillars to achieving that. The first is LeoDex. Obviously, Dex is really the flagship app now. Growing it is the key to everything. A great way to explain it is that LeoDex brings in USDC, which is exogenous revenue and capital and value capture, and it spins the entire economy. So, bringing in that kind of primary form of exogenous capital is really the key. And then from there, you're able to turn that into economic activity across the board. And LeoStrategy is going to be doing a very incredible job of turning every dollar of incoming USDC into $10 of economic activity. And I'll talk a little bit about how I think that's going to happen at the end of this. The second pillar is Leo Merchants. So by 2035, having $1 billion a year in processing volume, I think is very achievable for something like Leo Merchants, which is primarily focused on IRL payments, and using essentially the lead domino for that is also LeoDex, where Dex is the back end for Leo Merchants. So allowing any customer to pay in any crypto and any merchant to receive any crypto requires that you have Dex to power it all. So that's why LeoDex is a lead domino for that as well. And then the third pillar is LeoAI and scaling LeoAI. The goal is to get to 10,000 premium subscribers per month. I think a key way to get there is actually through LeoAI. You're looking at companies like OpenAI and what they've done with ChatGPT, and then even other companies, and even the long tail of AI companies. It's all about recurring revenue. It's all about subscribers. So when you want to access these different AI models or these different agents, they basically have subscriber models, and you pay $30 a month or $50 a month, for example, and then it gives you access, or I think ChatGPT is like 20. It gives you access to their AI models and agents to varying degrees for that subscription. So I think Leo Premium is headed in that direction. Right now, you obviously get features on the InLeo platform, but that's going to expand to be LeoAI features. And I think the people go premium in the future is going to be around the AI. There's 2 forms of AI, keep in mind here. There's the LLM model that we've been working on, and then there's also the agents. So we're essentially building, with the agents. I think that's where things get really interesting because, I don't think Leo is going to compete necessarily in terms of building the best LLM out there, but I do think we have an interesting setup where we have very high quality real-time data because of InLeo, very similar to how X, is able to feed Grok real-time information. So we are essentially creating a core model, which is the LLM, which is fed by InLeo's data. And then we're able to build an agent building platform. So I think that's where things get more interesting, is that we're able to build essentially a platform where you can build and launch your own AI agents to do various things. The two end pillars there are 10,000 premium subscribers and 100,000 AI agents and growing. What I envision is an AI agent marketplace that we build, and you'll be able to create your own modular agents, and it'll be very much like vibe coding. Like, you won't need any coding knowledge, but you'll be able to code your own AI agents. If any of you have used things like Replit or some of these other no code tools, the future is one where anybody can build anything. And I think that our AI agent builder will be very interesting for this. You can foresee a future not too far away where you'll go to a specific app, the LeoAI app. And then if you're premium, you'll be able to essentially use, a chatting interface to vibe code an AI agent to do whatever you want. So for example, if you want an AI agent that's a research assistant that helps you research and write blog posts, if you want an assistant that can help you with travel plans, you can build your own AI agent for that. If you want an assistant that tracks the financial news and real-time data surrounding it, and then feeds you, for example, 3 bullet points every morning when you wake up, what are the major things happening in the global economy? You could build an agent that does that, and it's fully modular. You'll be able to simply change the agent as you go and build and launch and have multiple agents if you want. And it's all driven by Leo Premium. If you're premium, you get to build these agents. And then you'll be able to choose if you want your agent to be public. So if you want a public facing agent, you can actually have it post to the chain as well. What that will do is create an environment where some agents are public, some are private. And the public agents will then be able to, people can essentially clone your agent and copy paste it into their own agent and then make changes if they want. So I think what this creates in terms of an agent marketplace is an explosion in the number of AI agents that are running on Leo. And these agents all do various things and are really like whatever the user wants it to be. So it's definitely going to be, I think it's going to be one of the most interesting aspects of the project in terms of the future of Leo. And you can imagine, agents that trade for you. You tell the agent, hey, when Bitcoin hits 130,000, execute a buy order on LeoDex, and an agent could do that. So you can imagine, people could have agents that are market makers, all sorts of things. I mean, it's really up to the user what they can create. And we're kind of seeing this already across the landscape of AI, is all these really niche and fringe products are being created. It's really like a new internet revolution. But I think we can all call it the agentic internet revolution.
So I think what I'm going to do is, if I see any questions related to the current topic, I'll throw those out as opposed to having this go back after you kind of cover everything. This one seems pretty straightforward. Ask, what's the number of agents currently?
There's about 80 to 100 agents out there right now.
Nice.
Many of them don't do things that are public facing. So they're doing various things in the background.
Okay.
And some of them are public facing. I would say like some of the more obvious ones are, for example, Leo.alerts, which is alerting you to Leo tokenomic movements like the POL buying back Leo or the CERT buying back Leo, or LSTR.alerts we built for the LeoStrategy team, which shows the balance sheet reporting every day.
Who needs whale alerts when you have Leo alerts?
It's essentially whale alerts, but it's AI, agentic. So it's actually smart. It's intelligent alerting.
That's awesome. How often will the NEI be posted? And then also, when any bot, Monk's Masters asked.
I think Leo alerts should have an NEI capacity. So if you didn't read the blog post, and I'm talking about the one I posted today, I released a figure, essentially a KPI that, and if you don't know what KPI is, a key performance indicator of how we'll track our success towards achieving $10 billion in market cap. And I'm calling it NEI, which is obviously not something I've made up. It's something that already exists in the world. But it's essentially like the equivalent of GDP, but for Leo. So NEI stands for Net Economic Inflows. Essentially, you can look at it as any way that Leo is able to generate economic income of some kind. For example, if LeoDex generates, like today, LeoDex generated a little over 250 USDC in affiliate fees so far. So that would be considered $250 in net economic income. And the reason why I put that in the blog post is because we do really need kind of like one figure you can point to say, are we being successful in the $10 billion mission? And the NEI figure really gives you a clear picture of that. Because if NEI is growing, then you know that we're progressing towards 10 billion in market cap. So the goal, for example, being $1 billion in trading volume on LeoDex every year. The NEI of that should be somewhere in the ballpark of 45 basis points on a billion. So that would be $45 million. So in terms of NEI, really just tracking the NEI of things like LeoDex, and then you're tracking the NEI of the agents, and then you're tracking it for Leo Premium, which at 10,000 subscribers, that would be the current premium cost, $100,000 a month in NEI. I do think with the agents coming, there's going to be scaled tiers of premium. So you'll be able to go like Premium Plus, for example. Just for simplistic numbers, you could say at 10,000 premiums, it would be 100,000 a month in NEI. And then you would look at Leo Merchants, and it generates 1.5% on every payment that goes through it. So that would be about $1 billion a year. You can run the math on everything I just mentioned combined would be your total NEI for the year.
Nice. Get that premium platinum.
I do think in the long run we'll have different tiers.
Nice.
So.
Kind of touching on the AI theme again. Task reminded everyone people need to fill the database for LeoAI. People posting GM doesn't cut it. So
yeah, I think engagement is a great thing, and I know people say GM, and it depends on how you do it. Like if you just say GM and you leave, I mean, that's just kind of a stupid way to put up a thread. And then you engage with people, that's a whole other thing.
What's a good example of useful content to help
Really,
grow?
it's just data itself is very valuable. Agents that I foresee a future where we've got agents that pull from news sources and post regularly. Like, for example, there's breaking news about if the Fed cuts rates. We want that information on Inleo as fast as possible within milliseconds of it breaking news. Because the faster, like, what we're in right now is a data gold rush. Data is the new gold. And we're talking in an AI future, data is the new gold, and whoever has essentially high quality proprietary data is winning in this new era of data gold rush. So you look at like X, they've got all the data on X, and that's all real time high quality data, and they've already done a really good job of essentially gatekeeping that from other AIs. So it's very difficult for other AI models to be trained on data from X, for example. And you're seeing a lot of lawsuits towards companies like OpenAI and other LLMs, where certain organizations and websites are saying, hey, you're not allowed to crawl my data and put it in your LLM. So what that means is the more high quality data that you can have access to in perpetuity, the better your LLM model and the better your agents are going to be. So really, it's every form of data possible. Whether you post that a turkey sandwich is better than a chicken sandwich, or you post that, hey, the Fed cut rates 2 seconds ago.
And Task, put a thread that said news and historical information is very valuable. I can, as an example, I could just literally, and it's funny because, I am very sporadic with my threads. I don't have any kind of common theme. I just randomly, when something pops in my head, whether it's a thought on the crypto market or just sharing a real estate adventure or whatever it is. But the reality is, there's knowledge sitting in my brain that I can just essentially thread out on a daily basis, whether it's like economic historical data or whether it's quotes from historical figures, things that I've learned throughout my life that I kind of like use as operating principles or data that I operate off of. So I think that's just a good example for people. It's like you have knowledge to share, hit it, thread it out, because LeoAI will be able to use it. So
absolutely. Data is the new gold.
Yeah. So I think it's just, because you look at it as a potential, people look at it as like a social interaction, social platform, but at the same time, it's like, well, if you have knowledge to share, just share it, because it's a net benefit for the AI, even if, it doesn't get engaged all the time from users. So there's still a net benefit there for the system.
Engagement is always extremely valuable. So it is still a social media platform, but you mix in social media with data. I mean, the game's already over. You know what I mean? This is already reality. Is that AI is mixed in with human data.
Yes. No one will ever have to think again. No.
Well, and I have this philosophy too that, what we've been experiencing really the last like 15 years, with the internet just kind of taking over everything, is, we've been thrust into this world of hyper consumption when it comes to content. And what AI is going to be able to do is essentially sort the noise from the signal. And what LeoAI and the agents on InLeo are going to be able to do is essentially just fill it with everything, and then allow the AI and in terms of the LLM, and then also the agents, filter that for you and turn it into high quality input for you as a human. For example, as a human, you don't want to intake everything that's being posted on the internet. You don't want to intake all that. You want to be fed the most relevant, most high quality information when you want it, and about things that are most relevant to you. This is why TikTok is so popular is because their AI algorithm is so vastly superior to all other social networks. When you open TikTok and you're a regular user, you are fed with videos that are just hyper relevant to you. I mean, it's very far between that you get a video that you're not interested in some capacity. And the reason why is because their AI algorithm is just so good at telling what you like and when you like it. That's why it's so addicting for people. They can sit there and scroll it for hours because it's just constantly feeding them things that they want to see. So that is like the first iteration of, really AI has been around for a lot longer than people think. It started with like Facebook's algorithm, then other networks added it. Google has it, obviously. TikTok's, I think, is the most advanced version of the social algorithm. And what I foresee happening is that all of this moves to agents, where instead of you have an algorithm on TikTok feeding you videos, and you'll probably still have that too, you'll also be able to have agents that work for you to say, hey, you want to see some good financial news right now. Well, I know what kind of financial news you tend to like. You're a Tesla stock investor. You tend to be interested in technology and compensation plans. And then it feeds you exactly what you're looking for. And the agent is just out there hunting down, instead of you being the front lines of intaking all that data, the agent is on the front line intaking all the data and then filtering it and then giving it back to you for what it thinks you want. I think the future is that every human is going to have at least one agent in order to help them essentially navigate the new world, navigate the internet and all the content that's going to be coming our way.
Makes sense. I
Because
mean, the
that's
funny
not
part
changing.
is,
It's only going
yeah,
to get worse.
you found like an aspect that kind of caught my attention, and that's actually a problem that needs to get solved because that is what has happened over the last 25 years. Like the information overload for us as humans, like that's why everyone's just so like ADD and just like scattered because you're just getting inundated with information all the time. It's like at the tip of your fingers, and there's studies that show if we're even designed to operate like that, AI being able to essentially filter it for us is probably a net positive because it's out of control, the amount of information available and the amount of information we get exposed to constantly on a regular basis. And it's probably why you look at mental health and how that's become such a big thing over the last couple decades, and it seems like a higher percentage of the population has anxiety and has attention deficit and all that stuff. So I think a lot of this goes hand in hand. So that's an interesting dynamic for AI kind of actually fixing a problem that was created by technology. So I saw some questions in regards to LeoDex. I don't know if you want to transition to that. I do know I got to get my Leo Leo staked, get S Leo, because in a week from now we are going live.
Week from today.
Nice.
Yeah. So USDC rewards start 1 week from today. And that's obviously on leodex.io/Leo, where you can stake your Leo. And then, like I said, like today, LeoDex generated about, over 250 USDC. And the day's obviously not over yet. Yesterday generated like $1,100. So the growth of LeoDex, and it's kind of what I was getting into at the beginning, which now would be a good time to circle back on that, is LeoDex is like the lead domino. It is essentially the river that flows into the Leo economy and then fuels everything else. You see LeoDex, for example, yesterday doing like 330,000 in trading volume. Today it's done about 75,000 so far. And, that is really the economic river of inflows. And then, so that brings in USDC, obviously starting next week. That USDC goes directly into the SLEO contract. Two of the biggest stakers are LeoStrategy and the POL. POL stands for Protocol Owned Leo. Protocol Owned Leo is perma-staked Leo. So for the past 90 days, I got a phone call.
That
So
makes
put this
sense.
on Do Not Disturb.
Amazing that you can even do this, from your phone. Yeah, I'm surprised too
Yeah.
on cellular data.
Especially so POL for the last 90 days has been using 100% of the USDC inflows to buy Leo and stake it permanently. On September 23rd, that obviously doesn't happen anymore because 100% of the inflows then go to the SLEO contract. But over that past 90 days, the POL has been building up its own stake, and that essentially is the beginning of the snowball for POL. I think by the time the SLEO, USDC rewards start, POL should have at least 1 million Leo staked. So that is a really nice starting point where then let's say, for example, that there's 10 million total Leo staked as S Leo. If POL has 1 million of that, that means that it's getting 10% of the USDC every day. So if POL owns 10% of the rewards that come in, yesterday, for example, it would have earned 100 USDC, and then it would auto compound that 100 USDC into more Leo. So then it uses the 100 USDC to buy Leo and add it to its SLEO stake. And then the next day it earns a little bit more USDC because its percentage of the 10 million just increased, obviously by 100 USDC worth of Leo. In a short term, I don't think that has like a massive impact. But when you look over the years that come, all the USDC inflows are auto compounding in the POL. And then the POL's percentage of the total earnings continues to increase over time. So that's obviously super interesting for the POL side of things, essentially just creating permanent demand for buying Leo. You can track that on leodex.io/Leo. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, it shows you the POL's address and the total balance of SLEO in it in real time. And it also will calculate, you can see there's some other modules there. Obviously, these aren't like, for example, right now they say 0 because the USDC rewards aren't live yet, but it actually will show you calculations on how much it expects the POL to grow every year, at what rate is it auto compounding, and other interesting data like that. And I'm sure we'll find more pieces of data to add over time. So that's obviously going to be really interesting for POL and just watching it and tracking it in general. And then in terms of LeoStrategy, I think what they're doing is very interesting because they're essentially building up a massive capital stack of Leo and then taking all of it, staking it as SLEO, and then essentially doing the same thing the POL is doing, where they take their percentage of USDC that comes in every day, they buy Leo and they add it to their SLEO and auto compound every day, which means that their balance sheet is expanding every single day in terms of the Leo per share that's held. And that expansion then allows them to create more products and services and derivatives, which then they use to raise more capital to buy even more Leo and stake it as SLEO and then earn even more USDC. And the whole flywheel kind of perpetuates itself. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see both the POL grow and also LeoStrategy grow. So POL, like I said, I think we'll have about 1 million Leo by the time, by this time next week, at least. And LeoStrategy already has about 2.5 million Leo today, and they're buying roughly 50 to 70,000 Leo a day right now at the current pace. By the time these staking rewards go live, they should have, where does that put them? Potentially close to 3 million Leo. So that's between POL and LeoStrategy, that's about 4 million Leo that will be staked as SLEO and earning its percentage of the USDC that comes in. And then obviously auto compounding it back into more Leo, which is permanent demand. So again, if you assume there's going to be roughly 10 million Leo staked, by the time USDC rewards go live, and if LeoStrategy and POL have 4 million of that, then that's 40% of the USDC rewards are getting auto compounded back into Leo. So now assume that, for example, we have more days like yesterday where there's 1,000 USDC earned by LeoDex. That would be 400 USDC auto compounding into Leo every single day. So I think that gets really interesting. And obviously 300 of that being directly to LeoStrategy, which then that 300 USDC a day is infinitely accretive to LeoStrategy holders. And then LeoStrategy is able to then utilize that balance sheet expansion to do more products, more services, more derivatives in order to raise more capital to buy even more Leo and increase that 3 million to 5, 10 million Leo over time. So the flywheel of those things are very interesting. But like I keep pointing out, LeoDex is really the river that flows into that city of economics. If that river is not flowing in terms of volume, and that's how you would define it, if that river is not flowing, then the economic wheels aren't turning.
Yeah.
Basically, the bigger that river is, the more energy there is to harness. And I think POL and LeoStrategy harness that energy very efficiently. POL just kind of harnesses at kind of like, you could look at like a 1x, but LeoStrategy is at what I would assume about a 10x or more, where every $1 of USDC added to their balance sheet to buy more Leo is actually going to create $10 worth of economic activity that rotates through the Leo economy through all their derivatives and products and services.
Nice. Cal's getting a phone call.
Still here.
Yeah. So with LeoDex, staking rewards are going to go live soon. The airdrop has been a thing, but I'm not completely up to date on that. So where are we with the LeoDex Volume airdrop? Like, I know phase 1 already finished. For those that earned airdrop, did that automatically get dropped, or did they actually have to claim it? When I look at the UI, I do see the claim phase 1. I'm assuming the base rewards is what the Leo is, the airdrop.
So the volume-based airdrop is closed right now. So any volume is not eligible for the airdrop.
Gotcha.
There's phase 1 already happened, and we have the phase 1 claims that are mostly done. The claim module ended up being a really big pain in the ass.
Gotcha.
To be honest. So I would say more than half of all the claims worked flawlessly. There were no problems. The other half have essentially required us to manually intervene,
Okay.
and people have had to open tickets, and then we've had to review and then figure out why their airdrop didn't go through. And there's, a lot of different issues essentially. And a lot of this is created by, so many different types of wallets, so many different types of
Oh yeah.
blockchains, because our claiming module actually lives on every single blockchain that is tradable on LeoDex.
When you go to claim, there's all the different options on how you claim, and which kind of threw me. I just assumed like I was going to just get Leo, and then I'm like seeing like all those different options.
Actually claim the address on each chain.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
all
pretty
right.
complex.
So and this is me personally, like, so I'm going to probably, and I've something I probably should have done already, submit a ticket, because I can't claim. And looking at my history, I don't see anything that looks like it was the airdrop from tier 1. Although I don't even know what I would look for. Like, if you guys, did you manually do them, or you only manually did the ones that had tickets? Like, what would I look?
The ones that are obviously failed or people
Okay,
reported to
gotcha.
us as not sent
Okay, sweet.
were manually fixed. But you
Cool,
could just
yeah.
look in your wallet for Leo. Look for Leo that was sent to you.
Yep. All right, that was
see
my
it.
question.
Yeah.
I assumed it would have been as Leo. I probably, like, honestly,
Yeah, and I
it's
think
something
the
that
address,
I haven't kept an eye on.
I think the address
and-
where you would receive the Leo from would end in 966A. Would be
Okay.
the
Well, I
ending
just
address
oh,
of
looking
the
at my
what was
transactions.
sent. Yeah.
I'm someone that should have submitted a ticket, when it was announced, obviously that there was there was an adjustment in terms of the process. So, okay, cool. No, it's good to know.
Something, submit a ticket, include all the information. And by the way, this is all for phase 1 claims. Phase
Yep.
2 claims, we haven't even opened yet. So once we're 100% done with phase 1 claims, then we'll open phase 2 claims. And a lot of people have asked, well, there's probably going to be at least 1.5 million Leo-ish left over that was designated for the airdrop. And what's going to happen with that Leo? It's still TBD. I think we'll either open phase 3, because there's supposed to be 3 phases. So we'll either do phase 3 or we'll cancel phase 3. If phase 3 gets canceled, then whatever is left over, roughly 1.5 million Leo or so, it'll just get deposited to the POL as permanent S Leo, and the POL will just own that Leo, which I'm thinking is probably the most likely outcome, because this claiming process has just really ate up a lot of time that I would rather have our team be spending on things like perps.
Yeah,
So
no,
I have a feeling that phase 3 will just be canceled.
gotcha. Yeah, it's definitely not the highest and best use of the developer's time. All right, so
Yeah.
I will bounce around a little bit with questions, because it's one, and I can't stay on too long after. Well, one cool thing I saw is Ashima pointed out that LeoDex has been sitting as number 2, and Asgard Dex isn't even a web wallet, which is the one that is ahead. So that's pretty awesome that LeoDex is doing that well.
Yeah, I think we're on our way to being the best web app for cross-chain trading.
Senior Coconuts, I think this one is probably straightforward. How does it affect LSTR.voter when people are unstaking to turn their Leo into S Leo? And I'm assuming that answer is just the LSTR voter just has a little less voting power.
Yeah, well, I think what we're going to see, and I know that there's a lot of questions about what happens to the economics of everything, really, because we've now introduced with S Leo a whole new way to stake Leo, and it's on the Arbitrum blockchain, which obviously introduces very interesting dynamics for in Leo, where you can also stake Leo and earn rewards, but in a very different way. You don't earn USDC, you actually earn more Leo, and you earn it by being active, obviously curating and creating content. What's going to be interesting to watch, and this is something that nobody can really predict with 100% accuracy, is there's a dynamic being created where there's going to be a lot of demand to move your Leo to Arbitrum and stake it so that you earn USDC. But that being said, for every Leo that is moved to Arbitrum and staked over there, that is one less Leo that is staked as Leo power on in Leo, which means that all the remaining Leo staked as Leo power is now more effective. So if you just use some big numbers, big picture numbers, let's say that half of all Leo staked on in Leo is moved over to Arbitrum and staked over there. Well, that means that the half Leo that remains on in Leo is now twice as effective curating content. It means that the curators who are holding Leo power, their earnings are going to double overnight. I'm just using big numbers, round numbers to say if half, and I think there was like roughly 16 million Leo staked before all of this went down, that there was 16 million Leo power curating actively. And, after September 23rd, 8 million of that is moved over to Arbitrum and staked there. And the other 8 million Leo power remains on in Leo. Well, that whatever Leo power remains on in Leo is now going to earn twice. The rewards will literally double. And it's because the rewards pool is the same size, but there's half as much Leo competing for that rewards pool. I think there's going to be some really interesting self-healing dynamics here where the more Leo that gets moved to Arbitrum, the higher the curation rewards are for anyone staying on in Leo, and vice versa. If a lot of Leo moves to Arbitrum, while the USDC rewards are going to go down because, relative to each Leo stake, it's all competitive. So both systems are competitive in and of themselves, where each Leo is competing on Arbitrum for USDC, each Leo is competing in Leo for more Leo. As that balance is dynamically changing, where you stake your Leo may depend on what the dynamics are at that time. So a lot of people have said, well, should I have all my Leo on Arbitrum so I'm earning USDC? Well, it depends. It depends on what your goals are. It depends on the dynamics of the system. Let's say in some extreme scenario, 25 million of the 30 million Leo out there moves to Arbitrum. Only 5 million Leo can be staked on in Leo. Well, it might be a really good idea to stake some Leo on in Leo so that you earn a bigger share of the same rewards pool where there's less competition. So that's why I think things are really interesting and hard
Well, I
to
mean,
predict. But that's also part
yeah,
of
at the end of the day, there's vertical integration, and because of that, there's a net benefit. So it's just like, regardless of where it goes, it's still a net benefit on the overall ecosystem. And now, whatever the weight of that benefit might be, a little bit better, a little bit worse, but at the end of the day, the overall trend is it's a net benefit to the ecosystem. So I personally am not going to really like overthink it, but that's the beauty of kind of having a vertical integration with all this. And like you said, really that flywheel effect. Stepping back over to LeoAI, Ahmad Manga asked an interesting question and said, and a couple of people actually kind of rethreaded and second their curiosity, asked, will LeoAI's LLM be available on Hugging Face at some point? Asking because if the LLM is good enough, AI bros will become interested in Leo.io as well.
I think it's very possible that we list the LLM in those places.
Cool. I mean, yeah, anything that can bring further attention to in Leo on a whole.
Consider it's a product, right? It's something that Leo as an ecosystem is selling to the world. So if we bring people in and I would look at like the main question behind anything that Leo does as a team, as a community, as an ecosystem is all centered around NEI, net economic inflows that we talked about before, where, for example, this question would be, well, would listing LeoAI's LLM on something like Hugging Face or other sites in order to attract potential subscribers to Leo Premium so that they can access that AI model, would that add economic inflows? And obviously the answer is yes. If you get 10 more subscribers out of something, well, now you've increased NEI by, 10 subscribers times $10 a month is $100 a month. So anything that increases NEI is something that we should.
All right. So staying on that topic, I see a question that's funny. Carefree says slightly off topic, but it turns out now it's on topic. Says, is there still interest in sponsoring local events? Obviously, if they appear to be a net positive. I know the people over at the Atlanta Blockchain Center. They always have projects presenting there and pretty good turnouts.
Yeah, again, if something is a net economic inflow to Leo, I think we should consider doing it. So I think if you can find a very material positive impact, then it should be done.
Well, if by any random chance you end up doing an event in Atlanta, let me know. The cat maybe would come. It's not, that's an easy trip, and
The cat could
it's an
slide
easy
on
trip.
over.
And I got some friends in Atlanta, so can always double dip, so to speak. Business and pleasure. I think this is going to be the last question because I got to dip. And this one is probably, I think, going to be more just an opinion type question. Sully Me said about Surge, it makes me a bit anxious to see the low amount of holders. I posted threads about this yesterday. Why is it that the core Leo group is only like 50 accounts taking stuff seriously, and there is very little happening outside of these accounts? Before you answer that, my response is, well, because there's a thing called 1,000 true fans. Well, apparently right now there's only 50. So we got to get that to 1,000 because, as been proven, All you need for big success is 1,000 true fans. Anyway, that's my sidebar. So your thoughts on this, Cal, with, I guess, the surge hodlers being so concentrated?
Yeah, I think the connection's a little spotty, so hopefully the video is fine for everybody. I don't know where the 50 number comes from because I think the surge holders are over 300. Someone can call it in the threadcast right now and everyone can look. If you do !surge base stats, it'll tell you how many surge holders there are. Pretty sure it's over 300. But yeah, like Mitch said, it only takes 1,000 true fans. And also keep in mind, I think this is a big reason that LeoStrategy is looking to expand to the base blockchain. So they're building the bridge for LSTR and Surge to go to base. I assume that future products down the line will be simultaneously launched on Hive Engine and on base. So keep in mind that when something's offered on Hive Engine, that is a very niche market. I mean, there is very low activity on Hive Engine. I think if you looked at the actual human doing things on Hive Engine, it's also less than 1,000 on the entire layer 2. So I think going to something like base is a huge deal. You're talking about millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of unique accounts interacting on a daily and monthly basis. So the market, it's essentially like saying we've got this, we've got the Atlantic Ocean right here, and we've also got this puddle in the sidewalk. Hive Engine is the size of that puddle, and you've got the Atlantic Ocean. So you can put your sailboat in the little puddle, and you'll obviously only be able to go so far. Or you could build a bridge where you can take your sailboat from the puddle to the ocean, and now you can plug into a world of, essentially infinite expansion, or very near infinite expansion. And by the way, that Atlantic Ocean is getting, 10x bigger every couple of years, right? Like it's still expanding. It's not done growing. So it is a flurry of potential economic activity that can come from being on the base blockchain. And I think that's why LeoStrategies is very focused on getting over there as soon as possible. So keep in mind that Surge, LSTR, even Leo itself being on Hive Engine, that is a very small puddle to operate in. The expansion to other chains is really necessary. Also, the holder base of Leo, kind of on that same topic, is expanding massively. If you actually track Leo on Maya protocol, there's a lot of new unique wallets that are starting, and I've obviously been tracking this. There's a lot of unique wallets that have been buying Leo, and that's because of the growth of LeoDex. Because now you have this whole set of users that are they've never even heard of Hive. They're out there trading cross chain, and they're like, hey, well, I've been using LeoDex, and you guys are building a great interface. Obviously, they read things like the $10 billion, market cap plan, and they're like, well, shit, you're a $4 million market cap right now. I'll roll the dice with you. Will you achieve 10 billion in 10 years? It's worth throwing $100 or $1,000 at. So we've been seeing more holders jump into Leo on Arbitrum through LeoDex than we've ever seen before. I mean, the growth rate of unique holders for Leo is growing faster now than it ever was in the past. We've got perpetual futures that are launching, any day now, and I think that will attract a whole new market of users as well.
Well, and that's what's important for a goal of big growth, is there actually needs to be an addressable market that you have access to. Crypto, in a lot of ways, is super segmented because you have all these different chains, right? And that's why cross-chain has become so important and so popular. But in order to have a bigger market share or bigger user base, you can't just be on one chain unless, I guess, you're sitting on Ethereum or something where that market's big enough. If you can access all of them and all those potential users, why would you not? Why limit the growth?
Right.
Speaking of LeoDex, we'll end with this last simple question. Monk Masters asked, will Surge and LSTR be tradable on LeoDex since base chain is on there?
You will be able to trade them right away on LeoDex. As soon as those pairs are launched on base, you'll be able to trade Surge and LSTR with pretty much any crypto through LeoDex. And that is thanks to our Rango and Relay routes, which will make those possible. I think also a kind of long-term future is that LeoStrategy, since it's going to be on base, we'll be able to connect with a lot of different base DEX and protocols. Also, Thorchain has the base blockchain, obviously. There's going to be some interesting connections that can happen in terms of what can be done. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I think one of the big things I'm watching too is the growth of LSTR and Surge on base, having those liquidity pools on there, and then having the bridge operated, by LeoStrategy between base and Hive Engine creates arbitrage opportunities for their market, which will create revenue, and all that revenue then buys more Leo, expands the balance sheet, and the expanding balance sheet then allows LSTR and Surge to scale in terms of price, which then creates more volatility, which can then be harvested into more profit, which then can buy more Leo and expand the balance sheet further, and it just repeats itself. So I think a huge moment is coming with LSTR and Surge on base. I know that they're working really hard on it, looking to get it done as soon as possible. Surge is now 52% sold out last time I checked. In the last like 24 hours, over almost 50,000, I think Surge has sold out, which is 10% of the entire pre-sale. As kind of predicted, once we hit that 25% number, it's just been accelerating, the amount of Surge that sells every single day. My prediction is something similar to LSTR is going to happen, where LSTR's pre-sale hit 50% sold out, and within 48 hours, it was completely gone, that final 50%. So I think Surge is kind of hitting that moment. Like last night, there was someone that bought like 30,000 Surge who had never bought any Surge before. So I think now it's kind of hit that stride where people realize that it could be sold. You could wake up tomorrow and it's completely gone.
Yeah.
So I think we're at that moment now where it sells out. And I think it's
Well,
really good timing, honestly, because having it sold out before base, I actually think is better than selling out on base. So we'll see what happens, but it's moving faster than I thought it would, which is great.
yeah. And obviously, as it gets sold, I think that's going to also spread out in terms of number of users and number of whales. Because
Right.
early on, obviously, the faithfuls are the one that jump on. So it's early innings, so to speak, of selling Surge.
Yeah, and
I mean,
LSTR, in the pre-sale sold out on August 4th, and it sold out at 90 cents per LSTR. That was the pre-sale price. And now LSTR is trading for over $4.
it's wild.
Yeah, so that 1,000 true fans concept is actually, very much amplified by the economics of what's built around here.
Man, so the
The early
lesson the
ones are
cat
the ones
learned
who win.
is lesson the cat learned is should have flipped all my Leo into LSTR, 4x my money, and then sailed off into the sunset and said, "See you guys later." That's
It's
awesome.
crazy to see how well the economics of this are designed. What I think is really interesting, ecosystem has options, right? Really, what LeoStrategy is building is a whole options market around Leo. So do the math and start to think about these
Yeah.
things. MicroStrategy did the same thing for Bitcoin, but now this is being done for Leo, where in the past you could have bought Leo and held it, staked it, and earned with it, right? That's all you could have done. Now you can buy Leo, stake it on either LeoDex or in Leo. So you've got options there. But now LeoStrategy has created essentially a leveraged fund in terms of the LSTR token. Last week, they generated an annualized 500% Leo yield. So they increased Leo per share by an annualized rate of 500%. That's insane.
Okay.
So what they've created is essentially an ETF product that very much leverages Leo growth and gives you another option. So if you want exponential upside, then you buy LSTR. If you want pure Leo exposure, you buy the asset, which is like buying Bitcoin, you buy Leo. If you want leveraged exposure, you buy LSTR. If you want downside protection, you buy Surge, which gives you a $1 floor price. It pays you a weekly yield of 15% APR, which is effectively 19% because of the pre-sale discount. So you get paid every week. And then you have a long dated call option where you can convert that Surge into LSTR when LSTR crosses $50, which is now basically a 10x away. So basically, Surge gives you downside protection and yield while you wait for LSTR to cross $50. So now you've got three different big options in terms of how you want to be exposed to the Leo economy. And really, best strategy is some mixture of all of those. As LeoStrategy continues to progress, it's really in its infant stages when you look at it. But as it starts to mature and progress and the balance sheet starts to expand even more, you're going to see even more interesting products get created that give even more optionality to people in the Leo ecosystem. So I think that's where things get a lot more interesting. And just to tie a bow on it before we jump off, LeoDex again is the river of it is the power source, right? So if LeoDex is doing 1,000 USDC a day in revenue generation, and LeoStrategy owns 50% of all the Leo staked, well now LeoStrategy is generating 500 USDC a day in infinitely accretive Leo per share for all LSTR holders, which then lets them expand the balance sheet and go out and do all these different derivatives, raise even more capital to buy even more Leo, and the whole economy, the whole flywheel continues to spin with more and more momentum. I think every 1 USDC earned by LeoStrategy is going to be turned into 10 USDC of economic activity for Leo. And that's just the functionality of LeoStrategy, where it's taking the inflows and turning it into derivatives. So it's harnessing the energy of that inflow into more products. and then buying more Leo with it.
So as much as I need to say goodbye, I'm going to ask this question that's only me asked because I thought of this in terms of, how when it's usually like when school's about to start up again and towns and governments will do the tax-free day, and then all the parents frantically go to shop to buy little things for the children for school on tax-free day. So let me ask, and we've talked about this on the last AMA, will there be a pain-free day to bridge our Leo to ARB with a lower fee than 10%? And I know this has been explained, but I thought about this today, and if it made any sense to potentially do one of those tax-free days, so to speak, where it's like there's one day where everyone can, and doing it in the near future, so people, will get all the Leo they want over to LeoDex and then therefore stake it, which is beneficial. But again, it's beneficial regardless of where it is because of the vertical integration. But just spitballing an idea for the public here. Thoughts on that? Or if we're just going to let the market forces do what they will. I see the phone being adjusted.
All right, you cut out for part of that. I heard, will there be a tax-free day? And then I know you were talking
basically the tax-free day for bridging Leo to Arbitrum outside of, just the ebb and flow of market forces.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm on my phone, so that's why things just keep cutting out. But yeah, the tax-free day, no. The bridging fees are all based on the market volatility. And like I said, I know LeoStrategy is working hard on their market makers. Once those are live, that should harness that volatility into profit for LeoStrategy, and that will cause the bridge fees to come down. That being said, I know a lot of people are essentially betting on it being before September 23rd. I don't know when that's going to be. I hope it is. I think that'd be great for the ecosystem. But bridging fees are all volatility based. So it might or might not be lower or higher by then. I don't think it'll be higher. So it'll probably be, if anything, it'll either be the same or lower. But yeah, I know everybody's betting on the fees coming down, but there's no predicting that.
I saw the question and I had to take a shot for the public. So
no, I think it's, well, and keep in mind the bridging fees are all burning Leo. So why would we essentially that's just giving up revenue for the ecosystem.
No,
right?
Not wrong.
Why do,
and this is why I labeled it a tax-free day, right? Because it's when the government does what, they're giving up revenue, they're giving up tax revenue. So yeah, well, I guess next Tuesday will be Leo staking
USDC day.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah. So we'll have a little launch party next Tuesday.
Sweet. I'm pretty sure I'm around. So yeah, and I got to get my stuff staked up as well, which I will get to probably later today so I don't forget. All right. Well, until next week, everyone, we will see you when hopefully the prices of all the cryptos are higher.
Thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you next Tuesday. Peace.